If you cast your mind back to 2017, you may remember seeing gameplay of a new shooter named Atomega. Developed by Ubisoft and released to relatively little fanfare, the game only sold about 72,000 copies and saw a peak of just 180 players in its first month, before struggling to reach even 50 players in the years since. I myself had forgotten all about it before the algorithm gods decided to drop this sleeper on a random Thursday. What made this rediscovery so surprising was that I actually learned about the lore and backstory of this game for the first time, and upon doing so, with years of other releases to use for comparison, I now wonder how an exciting new niche with surprisingly large possibilities for exploration had been comically fumbled. For those who have not played the game, Atomega is a free-for-all shooter where up to 8 players begin as harmless, glowing spheres that collect purple cubes called mass. The goal of the game is to gain points and rise up the leaderboard within 10-minute rounds. Points can be gained from a variety of things, from gaining mass to defeating other players. Upon reaching certain thresholds of mass, a player will evolve into larger and more powerful forms, increasing the threat they pose to other players. Forms also bestow point multipliers for all activities, incentivizing players to gain mass and evolve quickly to build up their score. The first form is called the Cell, and is obtained at the first bit of mass gained. It's just a jumping cube, to be honest. Then there's the Zoa, a weird fish-like form that is the most agile in the game. This is followed by the Saw, a bipedal form that looks a lot like a lost baby T-Rex. Then comes the Prime, which is a quadruped and a lot more beefy than it first appears. And finally, the Superior, a bipedal humanoid that boasts the most normal firepower while also being rather tall and is unable to enter buildings and most cover. Of course, there is also one more. Your only weapon in-game is a laser, which starts out weak but gets stronger with bigger forms as indicated by the greater and greater reticle. Despite there being no melee or advanced combat techniques in the game, the combat isn't flat either, thanks to innovative mechanics that make combat surprisingly layered. A unique yet important mechanic of the game is the option to teleport yourself out of a fight to safety, at the cost of de-evolving to your previous form as opposed to being killed and losing everything. This mechanic is actually really useful because it allows players to be more aggressive in defending themselves since they have a proverbial eject button to get out of a losing battle. The attackers don't lose out either, because a player that teleports leaves mass behind for their attacker to scoop up, while also becoming less of a threat. While your strategies will shift away from taking advantage of your smaller form's agility to taking advantage of cover as you progress through the forms, don't think that getting bigger means you can stop worrying about the smaller forms. While their hits do less damage, it can quickly stack up if you aren't paying attention. The most successful players maintain good spatial awareness, knowing when to third party on a big target with another big form, adding their extra DPS and catching their opponent by surprise, killing them before they can teleport away. If you're fast enough, you can get most of the mass left behind and get back into cover before getting deleted by your ally. On the other end of the spectrum, larger forms will be sure to take advantage of the increased damage and any available power-ups to end a fight quickly while it's in their favour. Their main concern will be trying to avoid open spaces where they would likely be ambushed and be destroyed, thanks to their limited mobility, unlike smaller forms that can cross quickly enough to avoid enemy fire or just jump into the tunnels beneath the arena and avoid combat altogether. In this way, the combat system is satisfyingly dynamic, and promotes different playstyles based on the situation at hand, and prevents the gameplay from getting repetitive and boring. The fact that mass from players fills your progress bar faster than ordinary mass further encourages aggressive action to attain quicker growth and rack up your score. As mentioned earlier, the game has power-ups, with a wide variety of abilities and options to augment gameplay and turn the tide of an otherwise decided engagement. There's Blink, a free teleport which allows you to get out of a fight without penalty, Grow, which doubles the value of any collected mass, Shield, which grants temporary immunity to all enemy fire, Magnetize, which attracts nearby mass to you, Steal, which takes mass off of opponents with every shot and adds it to yours, Rush, which boosts movement and jump height, Recharge, which is a powerful regeneration, and Increased Damage, which is self-explanatory, though it should be noted that it is more effective against bigger forms than you. My favourite power-up would be Impact, which is just knockback, and arguably one of the best power-ups in the game since the arena has a lot of edges. I imagine a lot of superiors have had major crash outs after being knocked to their death by a troublesome Zoa. Power-ups fundamentally upset established engagements and adds an uncertainty factor to any combat scenario. A superior could end up losing to a Saw if the damage power-up is used properly. A Prime could endure the wrath of a superior with a shield or recharge and outlast them in the end. Rush can make an annoying Zoa practically untouchable, and then you'll inevitably encounter a speedrunner who chains magnetizes and steals to run up the form ladder within the first 2 minutes of a game. Power-ups go a long way to spice up a match and keep all players on their toes. The apex of all this, that everything else in the game ultimately funnels towards, is the final form. The Omega. The Omega is incredibly unstable, constantly losing health and mass over time, and needing to consume vast amounts of mass constantly just to keep itself together. The Omega is the reward to the player for reaching the top, giving them the ignition key for a major power trip with unmatched power, until they finally prove unable to maintain their mass and explode in violent fashion, forcing them to start all over again from the bottom, though not before receiving a massive point bonus on top of all of that. Mind you, the other players aren't just going to hide away until that happens, because Omegas are both pinpointed on the map, and shooting them rewards players with mass. As such, Omegas will quickly find themselves as the target of the entire lobby. All this together means that the Omega is surprisingly well balanced for the god that it is, providing them with targets to fight and giving their opponents major incentives to stick their neck out in this raid against the ultimate lifeform. Now, while the gameplay has its unique quirks and interesting features, it only had the one game mode, a 10-minute free-for-all. Because the menu options weren't as varied as the gameplay, it ultimately wasn't enough to retain player interest, and it quickly fell off radars. And with Destiny 2 and Dishonored Death of the Outsider to compete with, are you really surprised? Certainly fell off of mine. And then, nearly 9 years later, I found it once more, and learned about the backstory and the whole other side of the game that it had previously been missing out on. In the distant past, humanity underwent a union with their machines, becoming a unique life form that is neither fully man nor machine, truly alien to the likes of you and me. The glowing spheres we begin the round as are the descendants of this ancient union. Now, this alone was enough to hook me. The concept of a transcendent successor race made by the peaceful merging of its forefathers, opens up so many avenues for storytelling, with themes of transhumanism, relationships with technology, and what it means to be alive easily explorable. And yet, we haven't even begun to crank up the dial yet, because despite the abstract pseudo-fantasy imagery of the arena, Atomega is an end-stage sci-fi setting, taking place in the very far future. The end of the future, in fact, during the heat death of the universe, where the stars are blinking out, energy is running critically low, and the final, truest death is at hand. Yeah, I know, it's wild. The beautiful skybox you look at in-game actually displays the death throes of the cosmos, before everything goes dark forever. But if that's the case, what of our race of spheres? Are the matches we fight in part of some war or conflict to secure the last traces of energy the universe has to offer in order to prolong our own individual lives? It would certainly track with the plot lines used by so many other franchises to great effect. Nope. As it turns out, our spheres have moved beyond such things, and have actually just set themselves up in, I kid you not, a time loop, and spend their days fighting in hyper-advanced gladiator battles, just for kicks, while the universe apparently collapses around them over and over. Atomega has no interest in painting a world that has been painted so many times before. Instead, it reaches into the depths of sci-fi and paints a canvas with nods to classics like the Zeely sequence, and it shows. How did I only learn about this now? How has this story only just come to my attention? Why wasn't this shoved into my retina sooner? Ubisoft actually managed to create a limitless universe, which asks poignant questions about the prolonging of the end and the abstract possibilities of the far future. The theme about living in the definitive end of times alone should have opened so many doors for storytelling and philosophical discussion. And yet, as of recording, the Steam charts only show just one concurrent player on Atomega. Atomega is dead, but not by the hand of time, but by the hand of a publisher that failed it from the start. Perhaps, in a way, this is the most fitting end. The other spheres have seen the writing on the wall and have exited the time loop, making peace with their fate and moving beyond it to whatever comes next, leaving the last Omega alone in a timeless vigil. One lonely divinity wandering an empty arena in an empty creation at the end of time. A lone monument to a history that will never be heard from again, nor recited of in the silent eons to come. But perhaps not, because you see, this video was originally meant to be a simple analysis of Atomega and where it went wrong, but at the time of recording this, the Steam page for Atomega has been updated. Reflection Studios have returned and posted an official announcement that Atomega is back in active development. You can now see a roadmap on the Steam page, and it isn't even just talk. The game has been updated, bringing changes to the UI, a new form called the Dragonfly, and the new ability to give up your power-ups for more mass. Even the skybox has been changed, which is who knows what implications for the future. If the comment sections on recent Atomega videos are any indication, the fanbase is still here, still enduring after all this time, and are ready to continue their endless fight against the end. Reflection Studios, if you're watching, you have the potential for pulling off a No Man's Sky, a cyberpunk. The community is behind you, so give it your best shot. And maybe explore some of that premium storytelling I was gushing about earlier. The Omega demands it. Thank you for stopping by. If you liked what you saw, please consider dropping a like and subscribing, and stay tuned for more content in the near future. Bye guys.